My name is Miranda, and the case I'm going to be discussing is the People versus Ralph Tortorici. And it's a case that highlights some of the important questions as to the competency of defendants to stand trial and the ability of the criminal justice system to deal in a correct way with potentially mental ill offenders. While much of the world first heard of Ralph Tortorici in December of 1994 when he allegedly entered his classroom at State University of New York, where he was a psychology major at 26 years old, and he came in with a Remington rifle and a hunting knife, demanding to speak to the president and taking the rest of his classmates hostage. At this point, the standoff lasted for 3 hours until a group of students rushed Tortorici to get his weapons, ultimately causing the firearm to go off and ultimately wounding one of his classmates. While this may have been the start of the problem for the rest of the world, this was certainly not the start of his problem for Ralph. This dates back to 1968, when Ralph was born, with a rare condition known as hypospadias. This is a congenital deformity of the urethra, which caused embarrassment for Ralph early in life. After 3 failed attempts to correct the deformity, which actually resulted in an opening at the base of his penis instead of at the tip, his psychiatric symptoms were worsening through the embarrassment. When he reached adolescence, Ralph was convinced that the government was listening to his every move through a microchip implanted into his penis. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at this point, and psychiatric treatment was attempted but was unsuccessful. The delusions expanded, and he believed that the government was now controlling his behavior with a second microchip that was planted into his brain. He actually made a list of everyone that he believed was involved in the conspiracy against him, in which he included his own parents and his brother. In order to better understand what really happened to Ralph Tortorici, it's good to get a good background on him. It's important to note that he was a very bright young man. While studying psychology at the State University of New York, he remained a B average, while suffering from all delusions at this point. A nurse at the school noted that he had some strange behavior and referred him to a psychiatric hospital at the age of 24. Having suffered at 8 years for this point, he still did not find successful treatment in his last attempt. This led to his release from the psychiatric hospital and eventually to another incident where Ralph walked himself down to the New York State Police Department and admitted that he had voices in his head that were telling him to molest young girls. At this point, the officer sent him to Capital District Psychiatric Center, where again, another failed attempt at treatment was not producing an answer for Ralph. In 1994, this is when he was able to purchase the Remington rifle on his own and proceed to his classroom where the incident occurred, and he was later arrested and charged with attempted murder, assault, kidnapping, reckless endangerment, and criminal possession of a firearm. At this point, Ralph Tortorici was examined by 2 psychiatric examiners, and they decided that he was not competent to stand trial. He was remanded to Mid-Hudson Psychiatric Center, where he received treatment but refused all medication. Ralph was rational, cooperative, and seemed to follow all of the rules, which caused the nurses to recommend that he was competent to stand trial and sent him back to court. In 1995, he appeared again, and although he was performed another psychiatric examination by Dr. Siegel, and he was decided that he was not fit to stand trial, they proceeded anyway, as per the request of the state and his own defense attorney. The prosecution argued that he was mentally ill but did not meet the legal standard of insanity, at which point the jury agreed with the state and rejected the insanity plea. He was convicted on all charges, and at this point sentenced by the judge to a maximum term of 20 to 47 years. This was appealed on the claim that Dr. Siegel's report should have been followed initially. However, the conviction was affirmed by 3-2 and then a 5-1 margin. Confined to a maximum security prison, his mental illness got much worse and eventually led to 1999, where Ralph Tortorici hung himself with a bedsheet tied to a shelf in his cell. While a case such as Ralph Tortorici's is certainly a tragedy, there are multiple things that we can note from this case to help us learn for the future to make sure that we do not make some of the same mistakes again. The first being how low the standards are of competency to stand trial. At this point, the competency to stand trial is so low that there was a chance that Ralph was actually not competent to stand trial mentally, but he did meet the law's criteria for competency to stand trial. Secondly, the failure of the prosecution to agree to a judgment of insanity would have avoided the entire trial. This probably would have led to a lifetime confinement in a psychiatric unit, which would have meant a safe community and a safe Ralph. The failure of the prosecution also to note that prison treats inmates as convicts and not as patients was a major misjudgment. Had they realized that they were sending him to a place where he would not receive any of the treatment necessary and he would not have the rights to any of the access that would help him, they may have decided on an alternative. Ralph Tortorici's defense attorney also never pushed the issue because Ralph did not want to go to a mental hospital. However, the defense attorney was supposed to have his best interests at heart, and by letting him stand trial while he was not mentally competent, he certainly did not do this. There was also the option of the judge to stop the trial if he had any bona fide doubt that he was not competent to stand trial. However, even when Dr. Siegel's report noted that he should not be put through trial, the judge did not stop it, and neither did anybody else. These issues are all important as we deal with many offenders that are potentially mentally ill, and it is important to know where we are putting them and how we are affecting the rest of their treatment, as well as the ability for everybody else to live a safe and happy life.